Captain Jake Morrison watched the stars through the bridge window of his patrol ship when the scanners started screaming. Something massive was coming through hyperspace, something bigger than anything he had ever seen. His crew of 12 turned to look at him with worried faces as the alarms filled the small bridge with red light. "What are we looking at, Danny?" Jake asked his sensor operator. Danny Clark stared at his screen with wide eyes. "Sir, I count at least 50 ships, but they're huge. The biggest one is the size of a city." Jake felt his stomach drop. Earth had never seen anything like this. Their small fleet of patrol ships and orbital defense platforms seemed like toys compared to what was approaching. He opened communications to Luna Base, the moon station that served as Earth's primary military command. "Luna Base, this is Morrison. We have unknown ships approaching Earth. They're massive." The voice that came back belonged to Colonel Amy Price, the base commander. "We see them too, Jake. Get back here now. All ships return to defensive positions." But even as Jake's ship turned toward Luna Base, the alien fleet emerged from hyperspace. The ships were dark metal with strange curves and glowing lines. The largest one was so big it blocked out the stars behind it. Smaller ships, still bigger, than Earth's largest warships, spread out in perfect formation. Jake had been a pilot for 15 years, but he had never felt fear like this. These ships moved with purpose, like they had done this many times before. Earth's entire defense fleet was only 40 ships, and most of them were small patrol vessels like his. "Unknown ships, this is Earth Defense Command," came Amy's voice over the open channel. "Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came in perfect English, which somehow made it more frightening. The voice was cold and mechanical. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet and species are now property of the Empire. Surrender immediately, and 20% of your population will be allowed to live as workers." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. 20%. They wanted to kill 8 out of every 10 humans. "This is Colonel Amy Price of Earth Defense Command," came the reply. "We do not surrender. Leave our system immediately, or we will defend ourselves." The alien response was swift and terrible. Beams of white light shot out from their ships, so bright they hurt to look at. Luna Base, with its massive shields and thick armor, lasted exactly 3 seconds. The beams cut through everything like it was paper. Jake watched the base where Amy and 3,000 people worked simply disappear in a ball of fire. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Jake broadcast to the remaining Earth ships, but he knew it was hopeless. Their missiles bounced off alien, shields that flashed blue with each impact. Their energy weapons did nothing at all. One by one, Earth's ships died. The aliens moved with calm efficiency, like farmers harvesting wheat. They did not hurry or show emotion. They just methodically destroyed everything that could fight back. Jake's ship was hit by something that scrambled all their systems. Emergency power came on as his ship spun helplessly. Through the static on his radio, he heard the last transmissions from Earth's surface. "This is New York Control. The city is under attack. Repeat, Manhattan is being destroyed. Beijing here. Massive energy beams are cutting through our defenses. The shield generators are down. Moscow Control to any ships. They're targeting population centers. Millions are dead." Down on Earth, Dr. Kevin Walsh worked frantically in his underground laboratory in Colorado. The mountain above him shook as alien weapons struck the surface. His computers showed the destruction of every major city on the planet. But Kevin had one last job to do. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he uploaded everything. Every piece of human knowledge, every scientific discovery, every piece of art and literature. He sent it all to the hidden colonies that humans had, built in distant star systems, colonies so small and far away that maybe the aliens would not find them. "Upload complete," his computer announced just as the ceiling started to collapse. Jake's damaged ship drifted in space as he watched the aliens land massive transport ships on Earth. Through his broken sensors, he could see the weapons firing down at the surface. Cities burned like candles. The ocean itself seemed to be boiling where the alien beams hit it. The Zephyrian ships worked for 6 hours. When they stopped, Jake's scanners showed the horrible truth. Earth's population had dropped from 7 billion to just over 1 billion. The aliens had kept their promise. 20% survived. Jake felt something he had never experienced before. It was not fear or sadness. It was pure, burning rage. These creatures had murdered his world, his family, his entire civilization. They had done it calmly, like it meant nothing to them. As his ship's power finally died completely, Jake made a silent promise. Somehow, somewhere, humanity would make them pay for this. The Zephyrian Empire thought they had won. They thought humans were broken. They had no idea what they had just created. 6 months had passed since the sky burned and the world ended. Lieutenant Lisa Park crouched in the ruins of what used to be Chicago, watching a Zephyrian patrol march through the rubble where her neighborhood once stood. The aliens wore dark armor and carried weapons that could cut through steel like butter. They moved in groups of 4, always in perfect formation. Lisa counted them through her cracked binoculars. 4 aliens, same as always. The Zephyrians never changed their patterns. This was their weakness, though they did not know it yet. Behind her, 12 other survivors waited in the collapsed subway tunnel they called home. Most were civilians who had hidden when the beams fell from the sky. A few were former soldiers, like Lisa, who had survived when their units were destroyed. All of them had learned the same hard lesson: stay hidden, stay quiet, and stay alive. "Same route as yesterday," Lisa whispered to Carl Rogers, a former police officer who had become her second in command. "They'll pass the old bank in 15 minutes. Carl nodded and checked his weapon. It was a Zephyrian rifle they had taken, from a dead alien 3 weeks ago. Lisa had spent days figuring out how to make it work. The weapon was more advanced than anything humans had built, but it was not magic. It had buttons and triggers and power cells just like human guns. The patrol disappeared around a corner. Lisa gave the signal, and her people moved. They had done this 17 times before. Each time they learned something new about how the aliens fought, how they thought, how they could be killed. Across the ruined city, other groups were learning the same lessons. Humans were scattered and broken, but they were not gone. In the sewers and basements, in the collapsed buildings and hidden bunkers, people were gathering. They shared food and weapons, and most importantly, they shared what they learned about their enemies. Far from Earth, Commander Ben Rivers floated in the command center of a mining station that had become something much more important. The Kepler colony had been a small outpost before the invasion, home to just 3,000 people who dug rare metals from asteroids. Now, it was the largest free human settlement in the galaxy. Ben stared at the reports coming in from other colonies. 14 human settlements had survived the initial attack by staying hidden or being too far away for the Zephyrians to notice. Most were small, but together they represented almost 50,000 people. It was not much compared to the billions who had died, but it was a start. "Sir, we have a transmission from the Titan Research Station," said Kate Holmes, the colony administrator who had taken charge of organizing the scattered survivors. "Dr. Walsh is alive." Ben felt a spark of hope. Kevin Walsh had been Earth's leading expert on alien technology even before the invasion. If anyone could help them fight back, it was him. The transmission was weak and full of static, but Kevin's voice came through clearly enough. "Ben, Kate, whoever is listening, I made it out before Colorado was destroyed. I have samples of their technology, and I've been studying them for months. I think I know how their weapons work." Kate leaned forward. "Can we build them ourselves?" "Better than that," Kevin replied. "I think we can build something better. These aliens are not as advanced as they seem. Their technology is old, maybe thousands of years old. They've never had to improve it, because no one has ever fought back. Ben felt the same rage that had kept him going for 6 months. The Zephyrians had destroyed his world because they could, not because they had to. They were bullies who had never met anyone willing to punch back. "What do you need?" Ben asked. "Raw materials, manufacturing equipment, and time," Kevin answered. "I have designs for weapons that can pierce their shields and armor that can stop their beams, but it will take months to build them." Kate was already pulling up supply lists on her computer. "We can get you everything you need. The mining stations have equipment and materials. The agricultural colonies can provide food and workers." For the first time since Earth fell, Ben allowed himself to hope. The Zephyrians thought they had won, but they had made a mistake. They had left humans alive, and humans had a gift for learning from their enemies. Back on Earth, Lisa's team struck at the patrol just as they had planned. The aliens never saw them coming. 4 humans with stolen weapons against 4 aliens with better armor and training. It should have been an easy victory for the Zephyrians. But humans fight differently when they have nothing left to lose. They take risks that no sane military officer would approve. They sacrifice themselves to save others. They learn from every defeat and come back stronger. The patrol leader died first, shot by Carl from an impossible angle. The second alien turned to fire but found Lisa behind him with a knife made from salvaged alien metal. The third called for help on his radio but discovered that human fighters had learned to jam alien communications. The fourth ran, something no Zephyrian had done in the 6 months since the invasion. Lisa's team took the aliens' weapons and armor and disappeared back into the ruins. In 30 minutes, Zephyrian reinforcements would arrive to find 4 dead soldiers and no trace of who had killed them. It would be reported as another equipment malfunction or training accident. Similar attacks were happening across the globe. Small groups of humans were learning to hunt the hunters. Each victory was tiny, meaningless in the bigger war. But each victory taught them something new. How to move without being detected. How to kill silently. How to make the aliens afraid. Chapter. Zephyrian commanders noticed the increasing losses but did not understand what they meant. In their experience, conquered species either surrendered completely or died fighting in the first battle. They had never faced an enemy that could lose everything and still keep fighting. Dr. Walsh finished his latest report and transmitted it to the colonies. His research showed something remarkable. Zephyrian technology had not improved in centuries. Their weapons were powerful but simple. Their tactics were effective but rigid. They had conquered hundreds of worlds using the same methods because those methods had always worked. But they had never conquered humans before. And humans had a talent for finding new ways to break things that were supposed to be unbreakable. Captain Jake Morrison emerged from the wreckage of a Zephyrian supply depot, his face covered in soot and his stolen armor dented from the explosion. He had been presumed dead for 8 months, but death was a luxury he could not afford. Not when there was still work to do. The depot had been easy to destroy once he understood how the aliens thought. They followed the same security patterns on every world they conquered. Guards walked the same routes at the same times. Sensors scanned the same areas in the same sequence. Jake had spent weeks watching and learning before he struck. In his backpack, he carried something more valuable than the weapons and supplies he had stolen, memory crystals from the Zephyrian computers, filled with tactical manuals and operational procedures, information that could change everything. 300 miles away, engineer Maria Santos worked in a hidden factory built inside an abandoned mine. She had been Earth's leading expert on shield technology before the invasion. Now she was something the galaxy had never seen. A human who understood both human and alien engineering. The shield generator on her workbench hummed with power. It looked like Zephyrian technology, but worked on completely different principles. Where alien shields blocked everything equally, Maria's design could be selective. It could stop energy beams while allowing bullets to pass through or block physical objects while letting radio signals work normally. "Try it now," she called to her assistant, Tony Garcia, who had been a car mechanic before he became a weapons designer. Tony fired a captured alien rifle at the shield. The beam struck the barrier and scattered harmlessly. Then he threw a wrench at the same spot. The wrench passed through like the shield was not there. "Incredible," Tony whispered. "Their shields can't do that." Maria smiled grimly. Their shields were designed to stop weapons that work like their weapons. But human weapons work differently. We build things they never thought of. The breakthrough had come when Maria realized that Zephyrian technology was based on brute force. Their shields were powerful but simple. Their weapons were destructive but crude. They had never needed to be clever because they had always been stronger than their enemies. Humans were not stronger, but humans were much more clever. Far from Earth. Commander Ben Rivers stood in the bridge of humanity's first new warship. It was not much to look at. A converted cargo hauler with jury-rigged weapons and armor made from asteroid mining equipment. But it was armed with Maria's shields and weapons designed by Dr. Walsh, and it was crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. "All stations report ready," Kate Holmes announced from the communications station. She had volunteered for the mission despite being a civilian administrator. Like everyone else, she had learned new skills out of necessity. Ben studied the tactical display. Their target was a Zephyrian patrol ship, alone and vulnerable in the asteroid belt. Intelligence from Jake Morrison had revealed that isolated. Patrols followed predictable routes and had minimal backup. "Begin the attack," Ben ordered. The human ship accelerated toward its target, moving faster than Zephyrian computers expected. The alien patrol ship detected them and raised shields, preparing to destroy another primitive vessel. The first human missiles struck the Zephyrian shields and exploded harmlessly, exactly as expected. The alien crew relaxed, following procedures that had worked for centuries. They charged their main weapons to destroy the human ship with a single shot. But the missiles had been a distraction. While the aliens focused on the obvious threat, a small human fighter approached from another angle. The fighter was piloted by Sam Mitchell, a former racing pilot who had learned to fly alien ships by studying wreckage. Sam's ship fired a new type of weapon that Dr. Walsh had designed. Instead of trying to overwhelm the alien shields with power, it used precisely tuned frequencies to create resonance patterns. The shields collapsed like a house of cards. The Zephyrian ship died in seconds, overwhelmed by human weapons that attacked in ways its designers had never considered. For the first time in their history, a Zephyrian crew sent a distress call that included the words, "retreating from enemy contact." Back on Earth, Lisa Park's resistance network had grown from 12 people to over 300. They controlled an area of 50 square miles in the ruins of Chicago, and similar groups were forming in every major city. The Zephyrians still held the planet, but they no longer controlled it. Jake Morrison arrived at Lisa's base with his stolen intelligence, moving through tunnels that connected dozens of hidden strongholds. The underground network stretched for hundreds of miles, invisible to alien sensors and protected by shields based on Maria's designs. "What did you find?" Lisa asked, as Jake spread the memory crystals on a table. "Everything," Jake replied. "Tactical manuals, patrol schedules, supply routes, command protocols, and something else. Communication logs from other conquered worlds." Lisa picked up one of the crystals. "What do they say?" "That we're not the only ones fighting back," Jake answered. "There are reports of equipment failures and personnel losses from 17 different planets. The aliens think it's just normal operational problems, but I recognize the patterns. Other species are starting to resist." Dr. Walsh's voice crackled over the secure communication system that connected all human groups. "I've been analyzing the data Jake recovered. The Zephyrian Empire has a critical weakness. They've never faced sustained resistance before. Their entire military doctrine assumes that conquest is permanent. "What does that mean for us?" asked Maria Santos from her factory. "It means they don't know how to adapt," Kevin explained. "They respond to threats by doing the same things harder, not by doing different things. If we can force them to adapt faster than their system allows, we can break them." Ben Rivers had been listening from his ship, now heading back to base after the successful attack. "How do we do that?" "By teaching other species to fight the way we fight," Kevin answered. "The Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. If even half of them revolt using human tactics and human weapons, the Zephyrians won't be able to respond effectively." Kate Holmes pulled up star charts on her computer. "We have the locations of 12 nearby systems with conquered populations. If we can get weapons and advisors to them..." "We start with the closest ones," Ben decided. "Small teams, fast ships, hit-and-run tactics. We teach them what we've learned, then move to the next system." Lisa smiled as she listened to the plan taking shape. 6 months ago, she had been hiding in tunnels with a handful of survivors. Now she was part of a growing network that spanned multiple star systems. The Zephyrians had created something they did not understand when they tried to destroy humanity. They had created an enemy that learned from every defeat, adapted to every challenge, and became stronger with every loss. An enemy that could teach other species to do the same thing. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled for 1,000,000 years because no one had ever shown their subjects how to fight back effectively. But humans were very good teachers, and they had a simple lesson to share. The secret to defeating a stronger enemy was to become smarter, not stronger. Lieutenant Lisa Park pressed herself against the ruined wall as Zephyrian boots echoed through the destroyed shopping mall. Her team of 20 fighters waited in perfect silence, weapons ready, hearts pounding. Today they would attempt something that had never been done before: capture a Zephyrian command post alive and intact. The plan had come from intelligence gathered by Jake Morrison's growing network of spies and saboteurs. The aliens had established a communication hub in downtown Chicago, a heavily defended position that coordinated all Zephyrian forces across the North American continent. If they could take it without destroying the equipment, they would have access to the entire alien command network. "Remember, we need the computers working," Lisa whispered into her radio. "No explosives inside the building," her fighters acknowledged. Silently. They had trained for weeks using captured alien weapons and armor. Maria Santos had provided them with new shield generators that could stop Zephyrian energy weapons, and Dr. Walsh had designed jamming devices that would prevent the aliens from calling for help. The first part of the plan worked perfectly. Tony Garcia's demolition team destroyed the external communication array just as Lisa's assault group hit the main entrance. The Zephyrian guards were caught completely off guard by the coordinated attack. They had never faced humans who fought with alien weapons and used alien tactics. But the real surprise came when the humans did something no conquered species had ever done. Instead of trying to destroy everything, they fought to capture. They used non-lethal weapons when possible, took prisoners instead of killing everyone, and carefully preserved the alien technology instead of smashing it. Within 30 minutes, Lisa stood in the Zephyrian command center, watching her computer specialist crack the alien security systems. The screens came alive with information: troop movements, supply convoys, patrol schedules, and most importantly, real-time communications from across the galaxy. "This is incredible," breathed the specialist, a former software engineer named Pete Wilson. "I can see everything they're doing, and Lisa, you need to see this." Pete pointed to a display showing star maps with dozens of flashing red indicators. "These are all reports of equipment failures, supply shortages, and personnel problems, but look at the patterns." Lisa studied the map and felt her heart race. The problems were not random. They formed clear patterns around systems where humans had been providing weapons and training to local resistance groups. Commander Ben Rivers and his teams had been busy. "How many worlds?" Lisa asked. 47 systems showing signs of organized resistance," Pete replied. "And the aliens still think it's just coincidence." The captured communications revealed something even more important. Admiral Vextar, the Zephyrian commander who had destroyed Earth, was planning a major expansion into the Centauri sector. 3 human colonies were hidden in that region, colonies that had been building the new generation of human warships. Lisa immediately transmitted the intelligence to Ben Rivers, whose fleet was preparing for their largest operation yet. Commander. Ben Rivers stood on the bridge of the human flagship, a vessel that would have been impossible to build without the lessons learned from a year of fighting. It was half the size of a Zephyrian cruiser, but mounted weapons that could punch through any alien shield. Kate Holmes had designed its tactical systems using captured alien software, while Maria Santos had created armor that could absorb energy weapon hits and convert them to power. 15 ships ready for combat," reported Sam Mitchell, now serving as Ben's chief pilot. "All crews are experienced, and all ships are equipped with the new hybrid weapons." Ben studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian force heading for Centauri was massive, 30 ships including Admiral Vextar's flagship. By traditional military thinking, the humans were hopelessly outnumbered, but humans no longer thought like traditional military officers. They thought like survivors who had learned to turn weakness into strength. "Begin the attack," Ben ordered. The human ships moved in a formation that no Zephyrian tactician could have predicted. Instead of trying to match the alien formation, they scattered in all directions. Some ships accelerated to maximum speed, while others appeared to retreat. A few seemed to suffer system failures and drifted helplessly. Admiral Vextar watched the chaotic human formation with satisfaction. These primitives had somehow acquired advanced weapons, but they clearly did not know how to use them properly. He ordered his ships to destroy the scattered humans one by one. The trap was sprung when the Zephyrian ships broke formation to pursue individual human vessels. Suddenly, the drifting human ships came back to life, their system failures revealed as deception. The retreating ships reversed course and attacked from behind. The scattered formation reformed into a deadly web that surrounded the confused alien fleet. But the real shock came when human ships began ramming Zephyrian vessels. No civilized military force had used such tactics in thousands of years. The aliens watched in horror as human pilots deliberately crashed their ships into alien vessels, using suicide attacks to destroy targets they could not defeat with weapons alone. "They fight like animals," Admiral Vextar said to his tactical officer. But there was fear in his voice now. "Sir, we're receiving surrender demands from the humans," the communications officer reported with confusion. "Surrender demands? From them?" Kate Holmes's voice came over the communication system, calm and professional. "Admiral Vextar, this is Commander Holmes of the Human Liberation Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately, and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war." Vextar laughed, but the sound was hollow. Around him, his ships were dying. The humans fought with a ferocity that defied logic, using tactics that seemed insane, but were brutally effective. Worse, they had weapons and shields that worked better than Zephyrian technology. "How is this possible?" he demanded. His science officer provided the answer that would change everything. "Sir, analysis of their weapons shows they are based on our technology, but improved in ways our designers never considered. They appear to have enhanced our systems using principles we do not understand." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextar gave an order that no Zephyrian commander had ever spoken. "All ships, retreat from enemy contact." The Battle of Centauri lasted 4 hours and ended with the complete defeat of a Zephyrian fleet by a force half its size. News of the victory spread through the galaxy at the speed of light, carried by the communication networks that Lisa's team had captured. On 47 worlds, Resistance groups that had been hiding in caves and ruins heard the news and realized that the impossible had happened. The Zephyrian Empire could be beaten. Species that had been slaves for centuries began to believe that freedom was possible. Dr. Walsh monitored the communications from his hidden laboratory and smiled as reports flooded in. Uprisings were beginning on worlds across the galaxy. The weapons and tactics that humans had developed were being shared with anyone willing to fight. "Ben," he transmitted to the human fleet, "you've done more than win a battle. You've started a revolution." But even as Kevin spoke, he knew the real war was just beginning. The Zephyrian Empire would not collapse easily. They would send everything. They had to crush the growing rebellion before it could spread further. The humans had shattered the myth of Zephyrian invincibility, but now they would have to prove they could do more than just win battles. They would have to show the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for no matter the cost. The liberation of Earth began at dawn on a cold Tuesday morning, exactly 18 months after the Zephyrian invasion. Captain Jake Morrison stood on a hill overlooking the ruins of Denver, watching the largest human military force ever assembled. Prepare for battle. 300 ships filled the sky above him, their hulls gleaming with new armor and bristling with weapons that would have been impossible to build 2 years ago. "All ground teams report ready," Colonel Amy Price announced, over the communication network. Amy had been presumed dead when Luna Base was destroyed, but she had survived and spent 18 months building a resistance network that spanned 3 continents. Jake checked his equipment one final time. His assault team would hit the main Zephyrian command complex, while Amy's forces attacked military installations across the planet. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Lisa Park's urban fighters would strike at communication hubs and supply depots in every major city. "Remember," Jake told his team, "they expect us to fight like the species they conquered before. Show them what humans do when we're angry." The attack began with Maria Santos unleashing her newest creation, orbital bombardment shields that could be deployed from space. The energy barriers materialized above Zephyrian positions, trapping the aliens behind their own defensive technology. For the first time since the invasion, human forces had the tactical advantage. Zephyrian defenders responded exactly as Dr. Walsh had predicted. They followed standard defensive protocols designed for fighting conventional military forces. They established kill zones and overlapping fields of fire. They waited for the humans to attack in predictable formations that could be destroyed with concentrated firepower. But the humans did not attack like a conventional military force. They attacked like survivors who had learned to turn desperation into a weapon. Jake's team approached the command complex using captured Zephyrian transport vehicles. They wore alien armor and carried forged identification codes. When the guards challenged them, Tony Garcia responded in perfect Zephyrian, claiming to be delivering captured human prisoners. The deception worked long enough for the team to get inside the perimeter. Then Jake detonated the explosives hidden in their prisoner transport, and the real battle began. The Zephyrian guards had never faced enemies who fought at close range with knives and improvised weapons. Their training focused on long-range combat using energy weapons and heavy armor. They were not prepared for humans who could move silently through ventilation systems or hide in places too small for Zephyrian bodies. But the real shock came when Jake's team began using psychological warfare tactics that no civilized military force would consider. They played recordings of human children crying over the base's communication system. They left photographs of destroyed Earth cities where alien troops would find them. They forced the Zephyrians to confront the reality of what they had done. "Why are they doing this?" one alien officer asked his commander as human voices echoed through the corridors. "Why do they fight so viciously for a dead world?" The commander had no answer. In Zephyrian culture, defeat meant surrender. Once a world was conquered, its people accepted their new role as subjects of the empire. The idea that a species would continue fighting after losing everything was beyond their understanding. Above the planet, Commander Ben Rivers led the space battle that would determine Earth's fate. His fleet faced Admiral Vextar's entire task force, 200 Zephyrian warships, including the massive flagship that had destroyed Luna Base 18 months earlier. The space battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships used tactics that seemed insane but were brilliantly effective. They hid inside asteroid fields and ambushed alien patrols. They used decoy signals to confuse Zephyrian sensors. Most shocking of all, they deliberately sacrificed ships to achieve strategic objectives. Kate Holmes coordinated the battle from the bridge of the human flagship, using communication networks captured by Lisa Park's teams to anticipate alien movements. "Vextar is trying to reach the command complex," she reported to Ben. "He wants to evacuate their ground forces." "Not going to happen," Ben replied. He opened communications to the entire human fleet. "All ships, converge on the alien flagship. Today we finish what they started." The final assault on Admiral Vextar's ship was led by Sam Mitchell in a fighter squadron composed entirely of volunteers. They knew it was a suicide mission, but they also knew that destroying the flagship would cripple Zephyrian command and control across the entire sector. Sam's fighters attacked in waves, each one using the wreckage of the previous wave as cover. The Zephyrian flagship's shields held against the first two attacks, but the third wave included a ship piloted by Maria Santos herself. She had loaded her fighter with experimental weapons that could overload alien shield generators. Maria's ship died in a ball of fire that lit up half the sky, but her sacrifice created a gap in the flagship's defenses. Sam led the remaining fighters through the breach and directly into the alien ship's hangar bay. The battle inside Vextar's flagship became a nightmare for the Zephyrian crew. Human fighters moved through the corridors like ghosts, using their smaller size and superior knowledge of the ship's layout to devastating advantage. They had studied captured Zephyrian vessels for months, learning every weakness and vulnerability. Admiral Vextar himself died when Jake Morrison's assault team reached the bridge of the command complex on Earth's surface. Jake had fought his way through 18 months of hell to reach this moment. The alien who had ordered the destruction of his world stood before him, confused and defeated. "Your species is insane," Vextar said as Jake approached with a captured Zephyrian weapon. "You fight like wild animals. You sacrifice everything for nothing." Jake looked at the alien who had murdered 7 billion people and felt the rage that had sustained him for 18 months. "You're wrong about one thing," he said quietly. "We're not fighting for nothing. We're fighting for them." Vextar died, as Earth had died, suddenly, violently, and without mercy. The liberation of Earth was complete within 12 hours. Across the planet, Zephyrian forces surrendered or died. Those who tried to retreat found their escape routes blocked by human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. But the real victory was not the liberation of one world. It was the message that Earth's freedom sent to every enslaved species in the galaxy. Dr. Walsh's communication networks carried news of the victory to hundreds of worlds, along with detailed instructions for building human-designed weapons and using human tactics. Within days, uprisings began on 73 worlds. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for 1,000,000 years, suddenly found itself fighting wars on dozens of fronts. Their military forces, designed for conquest and occupation, proved inadequate for fighting sustained rebellions. Colonel Amy Price stood in the ruins of Luna Base as construction crews began rebuilding humanity's first space station. "What's our next target?" she asked Jake Morrison. Jake looked up at the stars where human ships were already departing for other systems. "All of them," he answered. "Every world they've conquered, every species they've enslaved. We're going to teach the galaxy something the Zephyrians never learned." "What's that?" "That rage can be a weapon if you know how to use it." 2 years after the liberation of Earth, the galaxy burned with the fire of revolution. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Vengeance, watching the Zephyrian homeworld grow larger on the main screen. Around his Ship, the largest fleet in galactic history, spread across space like a swarm of metal locusts. 800 human vessels and 3,000 ships crewed by liberated species from across the Empire. The Zephyrian capital world had never been threatened in its million-year history. Its orbital defenses were massive and supposedly impregnable, but the approaching fleet carried weapons designed by humans who had learned to break things that were supposed to be unbreakable. "Final approach in 30 minutes, reported Kate Holmes from the tactical station. She had become humanity's leading expert on combined fleet operations, coordinating attacks that involved dozens of different species using hundreds of different technologies. Jake opened communications to the entire Liberation fleet. "This is Morrison to all ships. Today we finish what they started when they murdered our world. Today we show the galaxy that empires built on fear can be brought down by people who refuse to be afraid." The response came in dozens of languages, from species that had been slaves until humans taught them to fight, crystalline beings who communicated through light patterns, gas giant dwellers who had been conquered despite living in environments no Zephyrian could survive, machine intelligences that had been forced to serve organic masters for centuries. All of them had learned the same lesson from humanity. The secret to defeating a stronger enemy was not to become stronger, but to become angrier and smarter. Dr. Walsh monitored the approach from his laboratory ship, now equipped with the most advanced research facilities in the galaxy. His teams had spent 2 years studying captured Zephyrian technology and making improvements that the original designers could never have imagined. "Jake, I'm reading massive energy buildups from their planetary defense grid," Kevin transmitted. "They're charging their planet killer weapon. The planet killer was the Empire's ultimate deterrent, a weapon that could crack a world's crust and boil its oceans. It had been used 17 times in Zephyrian history to destroy rebellious worlds and ensure that other species remained obedient." "Let them fire," Jake replied calmly. "Kate, activate the Morrison Protocol." The Morrison Protocol was named after Jake himself, though he had not asked for the honor. It was based on a simple principle that humans had discovered during their, darkest hour. If your enemy has a weapon you cannot match, make that weapon useless. As the planet killer weapon fired, Earth's new defensive systems activated. Maria Santos had died liberating Earth, but her work lived on in shield generators that could absorb massive amounts of energy and redirect it. The planet killer beam struck the human fleet and simply disappeared, its energy converted and stored for later use. "Impossible," whispered the Zephyrian fleet commander as he watched his most powerful weapon fail completely. "That beam has destroyed 17 worlds. How did they stop it?" The answer came from Admiral Vexitar's replacement, younger Zephyrian named Kesaval, who had studied human tactics after the disasters at Earth and Centauri. "They did not stop it," he said with growing horror. "They absorbed it. They're going to use our own weapon against us." Kesaval was correct. The energy from the planet killer beam was redirected through human weapon systems and fired back at the Zephyrian defense grid. Orbital platforms that had protected the homeworld for thousands of years exploded in chains of fire that lit up the planet's night side. The invasion of the Zephyrian homeworld became a textbook example of how to conquer. A fortress that had never fallen. Human tactics, refined through 2 years of constant warfare, proved devastatingly effective against defenders who had never faced a real attack. Lieutenant Lisa Park led the assault on the capital city, her urban combat veterans supported by alien soldiers who had learned human-style guerrilla warfare. The Zephyrian army had been designed to conquer and occupy, not to defend their own territory against enemies who knew their weaknesses. The battle for the capital lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrian government had surrendered unconditionally, and their emperor had fled to a fortress on the far side of the planet. Commander Ben Rivers personally led the mission to capture the emperor. His assault team included Tony Garcia, now a general in the Liberation Army, and Sam Mitchell, who had somehow survived 4 impossible missions and become humanity's most decorated pilot. The Imperial Fortress was a monument to Zephyrian arrogance, filled with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds. Ben walked through halls lined with artifacts stolen from species that had been enslaved or destroyed. In the center of it all, he found Emperor Zeftok hiding in a bunker surrounded by his personal guard. "I surrender," the Emperor said immediately, when Ben's team broke through the final defenses. "According to galactic law, you must accept my surrender and treat me as a prisoner of war." Ben looked at the creature who had ruled an empire built on genocide and slavery. For a moment, he felt the same rage that had driven humanity for 2 years. This being had ordered the deaths of billions, the enslavement of entire species, the destruction of countless civilizations. But then Ben remembered what humanity was fighting for. They were not fighting to become like their enemies. They were fighting to build something better. "I accept your surrender," Ben said. "You will be tried for your crimes by representatives of every species you enslaved. Justice will be done, but it will be real justice, not revenge." The Emperor's trial became the foundation for a new galactic government. Representatives from 300 liberated species gathered on Earth to write laws that would prevent another empire like the Zephyrians from ever rising again. Colonel Amy Price, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the new Galactic Federation, presided over the negotiations. The discussions were complex and often heated, but they were guided by principles that humans had learned through bitter experience. Freedom could not be imposed by force, and peace could only last if it was built on justice. Dr. Walsh established the first Federation Academy on Luna, rebuilt from the ruins of the base that had been destroyed in the first minutes of the war. The Academy's mission was to teach the arts of defense to any species that wanted to learn. Never again would the galaxy be defenseless against tyrants. The Zephyrian Empire officially ended when Emperor Zeftok was sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against galactic civilization. The former imperial worlds were granted independence and invited to join the Federation as equals. Some Zephyrian leaders chose exile rather than face justice. Others, particularly the younger generation, who had been horrified by their empire's crimes, stayed to help build a better future. Admiral Kesevel became one of the Federation's most effective military advisors, teaching defensive tactics that incorporated lessons learned from humanity's resistance. Jake Morrison retired from active duty but remained as an instructor at the Federation Academy. His first lecture was always the same. The secret to defeating a stronger enemy is not to match their strength. The secret is to become something they cannot understand or predict. One of his students, a young Zephyrian who had lost family in the revolution, asked him a question that Jake had been expecting. "How do we make sure this never happens again?" Jake looked out the window at Earth, green and blue and alive again after years of reconstruction. Human cities rose from the ruins, but they were not built alone. Species from across the galaxy had contributed to the rebuilding, sharing technologies and ideas that made Earth stronger than it had ever been. "We make sure," Jake answered, "by remembering that freedom is not something you win once and keep forever. Freedom is something you have to choose every day, and sometimes you have to fight for it. But if you're willing to fight together, if you're willing to learn from each other, if you're willing to become something better than what you were before, then no empire can stand against you." The human rage that had shattered the Zephyrian Empire became the foundation for something the galaxy had never seen, a civilization built on the idea that strength came not from dominion over others, but from cooperation between equals. It was not perfect, but it was something worth fighting to protect. And humanity, having learned the hardest lesson of all, stood ready to teach it to anyone who threatened the peace they had bought with their blood and fury.